Right, so this is just a quick video about the replacement of an expansion cylinder on our heating system. So just to sort of give a bit of context about how this all works, this is a heating system that's got two hot water cylinders, and the hot water cylinders are heated by a nice Valent boiler that's here. So basically when the programmer is saying give me hot water, and that applies voltage to the circuit. So the programmer says, actually it's that programmer says give me hot water, assuming that the thermostats on the cylinder are calling for hot water. That then opens one of these two motorized valves. There's one for each cylinder, cylinder 1 and cylinder 2. When the valve is open, that closes a micro switch, which then starts the boiler, which has got a pump inside, and that then pumps the hot water, heats the hot water, pumps it around these pipes up here, and that down over here, and into the primary heating circuit of the two cylinders. Of course, when the water in the cylinder heats up, it expands, and unless you leave the taps open all the time, that expansion will need to go somewhere. So each of the cylinders has what's called an expansion vessel, and there's one there, and then the other cylinder has one that's tucked in behind there. Now we moved into this house about 10 years ago, and so far I've replaced each of the cylinders once, and what's happened to them in the past was that the bladder inside, or the balloon inside, gets a hole in it, so water leaks onto the wrong side of the bladder and causes it to fail. And you can tell that that's happened in a number of ways, but one of them is if you tap the cylinder and you hear it, that doesn't sound very tinny, whereas this one over here, if we tap, does. So that's because it's full of water, and what seems to happen with these, although they have a good warranty of 3 or 4 or 5 years, they seem to fail after 6 years or so. I repressurize them at least twice a year, or check the pressure at least twice a year. No reason why they should. It just seems to get a hole in the bladder. Anyway, so I've detected that this one's probably full of water, and we'll verify that in a minute by there's a Schroeder valve at the top, which I'll show you actually, and what we'll do is we'll let the air out, and we should not have any water coming out of that, but we'll check that. And just as another thing, I'm not a plumber, so I don't know if this is the standard, but these expansion vessels are white, and I believe that typically white expansion vessels imply therefore for water that you may drink, or I'm not suggesting that you drink hot water out of your hot water tap, but it's so-called potable water, whereas the expansion cylinder on the for the hot water circuit, which of course drives the radiators, is red, and that's not specifically for potable water, so that's obviously got chemicals and that sort of thing going around the circuit, inhibitors and that sort of thing, whereas of course the water that's in the tank you will bathe in, and you may brush your teeth with it a little bit, and so that's a different one. So this is, you need to make sure if you are changing a hot water expansion tank that it's one of the right type. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just let some air out of it. Now the way this works basically is it's a metal cylinder, and inside there's a balloon, and the balloon or bladder, some people call it, and the bladder's full of air which is pumped in through that valve. When it comes from the factory, it's pre-charged with I think 3 bars of pressure, and I think they use nitrogen, presumably because that's a non-corrosive inert gas. You can pump them up with air afterwards, just with a bicycle pump. But the fact is that the air is in the bladder, and that pushes down on essentially water, which would be coming up that pipe when the water expands. But there should never be water coming out of the Schroeder valve. If it does, what that implies is that the bladder's got a hole in it. So what we'll do is we'll let some air out, and we'll see in a minute, because I did this a bit earlier. I've repressurized, so the air will come out, but there'll be some water in a bit, so we'll just watch that. So this is letting out the 3 bars of pressure. It's got quite a lot of air in it, because I did repressurize just the other night when I was sort of testing it. But as you can see, there's water coming out. So water has ended up on that side of the bladder. So what I suspect has happened is it's failed, right? So the first thing to do is to basically solve this problem. I mean, fix it and that sort of thing. So I'm going to just jump to I'm going to stop the video here, but restart with talking a bit about the cylinder that I've bought and some things to be aware of. Right, so this is the new expansion tank, expansion cylinder that I've ordered from B&Q. I think B&Q sell it on their website, but it's not in store, and I think it's actually supplied and delivered by a partner of B&Q or another company. But it was not too expensive, so I bought the exactly the same one. You might say, if the old one's failed, why am I buying the same one? Well, it's a good point. I mean, maybe they don't have a very good life on them, but anyway, I have bought the same one, and because that makes it just easier to fit, because all the fittings and brackets will be in the same place. Bought from B&Q, I think pretty reasonable. It cost £52 including delivery, and it was very well packaged. So it came in a box by Royal Mail. It was 25 delivery, which is great, and then that box contains the box that's actually got the cylinder in it. One thing to be aware of with this model, and I'm not sure if it's just always like this or whatever, is that there's it's called the Zilmet Ultra Pro 19 litre 10 bar, but then there seems to be a number of variants of it, and I've gone for the one which is the 1951. Which is basically meaning that the connection on it is a 22mm compression fitting. The 1955 is a 3/4 inch compression fitting. 22mm is almost exactly 3/4 of an inch, but not quite. But if you happen to come across the wrong one, or buy the wrong one, then your old fittings won't fit, and you'll have to change a bit of your plumbing work and perhaps cut the end of the pipe off and that sort of thing. I made that mistake once. I didn't realise doesn't actually appear to be written anywhere on the cylinder as to what one it is. It's on the packaging. So when I bought another replacement, it did have the wrong fitting, which was somewhat annoying. Luckily, maybe one's not supposed to do this, because all that failed was the bladder in the cylinder. I actually took the fitting off the old cylinder, which I took out last time I changed it, and fitted to the new cylinder, and it bolts on. It's all fine. And then that, of course, does allow me to reuse the plumbing and that sort of thing. But it took me it was quite annoying, because when I first tried this, it essentially the pipe sort of fitted, but the thread wouldn't quite make it, and it's because a 22mm compression fitting is not quite exactly the same as a 3/4 inch, which is, there you go. Anyway, so it was well packaged, and I'm just going to unbox that now. Hopefully it won't crash the floor, but we will see. So this is what I bought. So it's the Ultra Pro, made by Zilmet, Italian, and comes in again a box. Again, this one, when I ordered the one a few years back, the postage it was just packed only in this box, and it was all a bit knackered and dented and that sort of thing. So I'm very glad that B&Q their supplier did a very good job of putting an outer box around it, and then it comes in the inner box, and then this is the new unit. So it comes in the box with some instructions, I think. Maybe not any instructions, but I'm not sure. So there's the cylinder, and then there's the new nut and olive, which I won't be using, I hope. If the thread's the right one, that I can use the old one that's on the existing pipe, so I don't have to do any plumbing work. So this is the actual model number. But as you can see, so this is called, doesn't anywhere say on the... Well, actually, having said that, it does have it written there, but my old cylinder didn't. So I'm looking for 1951, but that's the model number of the new one. And I'll just look at I'll stop the video, go back down to the old one, and see if it's got their number on it anywhere. I don't think it did. So this is the sticker on the cylinder that I'm going to change, and I can't for the life of me see where it says what the base number is. I can't find it anywhere on there. So hopefully it's the right one. If not, I'll be changing the plate over at the bottom, which is basically that, which might look a little bit furry, but it can be cleaned up enough. But hopefully it's the same. And I said that's the new one that's going to be that. Hopefully it's the same thread. So we'll we'll have a go, but do a bit of preparation work first, covering the tools we need to do, safety precautions, and then we'll get on with the job. Right, so when it comes to any job, there are a couple of important things. So first of all, you want to take safety fairly seriously. So hot water cylinders are full up with hot water. And secondly, you also probably don't want to flood your house, and you don't want to end up in a situation where you get halfway through the job and find you've generated a leak that you can't fix. Because with lots of DIY, we're typically doing it after work. So if things go wrong, I won't have the opportunity to call out a plumber, or if I do, it'll be an emergency. So the first thing to do is we're going to isolate the water. Now this is the main tap for our house. I'm going to basically turn it clockwise, turn it off. The system will still have a bit of pressure in it, but it'll stop the flow. It's a good tip for taps. So it's on at the moment, but just wanted to say, to open it, you basically open it kind of all the way. But when you want to leave it open, it's best if you turn it back half a turn. It's just good practice. If you've ever been diving or anything like that, it's better not to leave valves when they're open in a fully open, right at the end of the thread situation, because they can sort of tend to corrode into that space, and then it's very hard to unjam it. So the nice thing about turning it back about half a turn is that if it does corrode, you can turn it in both directions to break the corrosion, and then turn it on or off as you need to. So at the moment it's on, so we're just going to turn that a few turns to turn it off. So at this point now we are hopefully we're off, so it's off and all the water to the house off. So if anything goes wrong, might not have water tonight, but at least we're not going to flood the house. The next thing I want to do, I'm just going to move you between two places, so I can drain some of the water out of the system here, but I was going to take you into the sort of boiler room again. So I've done a few things here. I've turned off the circuit that drives the hot water, so the boiler's not going to come on no matter what I do. I've also because we installed lots of isolation valves on various bits of the system, I've turned off this cylinder. This is the good one with the good expansion tank, so that when I run water out of the system to drain it down, I'm not wasting hot water in there. And then this is the one we're going to do, and you can see that the pressure of the system is at 3 bar, which is our operating pressure. I've had the hot water cylinders turned off from a heating perspective for the day, and I've asked everyone in the house to have their showers, and hopefully that's drawn most of the water out of this cylinder, which is useful and hot. But we'll see. I mean, it's still 44 degrees, but at least it's not at 50 whatever. So what we're now going to do is we're going to run some water out of the tap to drop the pressure in the cylinder. Okay. So we're just going to start the hot and cold water taps, and if we go back to the cylinder in question, or back to the pressure gauge, we should see the pressure of the house drop off to 0. So we'll leave that running for a bit. Now, the next thing to do is we're going to essentially take the expansion vessel off, right? But what I would say is that the pipe which goes into the bottom of the expansion vessel is about 2/3 of the way of the height of the cylinder. So of course this cylinder will still have water to there, up to the top. So if I were to take this off now, then water out of the cylinder and running out of the rest of the system will no doubt bobble out of this pipe and end up all over the floor. So we're not going to do that. Luckily, whoever installed the cylinders in the first place did a fabulous job of putting lots of drain ports in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a hose on there, and we're going to drain the water out of the system. And of course, on the other cylinder there was one over there, and there's plenty of drain ports around the place. Now, when I let water out of there, because there may be a vacuum in the tank, because of course the rest of the pipes are open. Because the taps are closed. When I open that, not much water may come out. We'll have to wait and see. So what I'm also planning to do is to just undo the nut on the top of the cylinder, which will then of course and I can close off that isolation valve, stop water running back from our house, and that will let air in, which should then drain out. So we're going to do that next. I think the other thing I should probably mention is having the right tools will be an important part of this job. I shouldn't need all that much stuff, so I've got a kind of a large buckety thing to drain water into, and a bit of hose that will go onto my drain point. There's a small spanner that's going to be used to undo the drain point. We've got a number of pliers, grips, adjustable spanners, wrenches, that sort of thing, and that can be used to then undo the various compression fittings that are here. Okay. When we come to put it together, we'll probably put a bit of pipe sealant, silicone on the threads to make sure it's all smooth and sealed and that sort of thing, but we'll see. The other thing I need is a screwdriver to undo those screws that hold onto the wall. So that's just a cross blade screwdriver that's there, which I'll use to loosen those. So I think the next thing to do is to start to drain the system down and see what happens there. So I've now attached a hose to the drain point. Because the drain point is sort of close to a motorised valve which does have mains in it, it's a really good idea to turn off your electrical system. So I've got some various isolation switches here, so I will turn off the whole system before I start draining it, just in case water does go onto the motorised valve. The motorised valve is not energised at the moment, but we certainly don't want to cover it with water. It's not a waterproof item, so we want to make sure we keep water away from it. So I'll turn all the system off. Hopefully we won't spill anything onto it, but if you did, you'd want to thoroughly dry it before you start. So using an adjustable spanner, little adjustable spanner, I'm now going to undo this drain point. Sometimes they sort of stick a little bit, and we'll have to see how that goes. And if they do, you just have to undo the outside ring. But as it turns out, it looks like water is draining out, albeit at quite a slow rate. So I think what we'll do is we'll let some air in at the top. The other place to let it in is the pressure release valve, actually. So we could let some air in here. And that will let air into the system, and it should drain a bit faster. I can hear air bubbling in. It's coming out though, so it's draining out. And so perhaps we'll just let it run for a while. I'll stop the video, but basically the plan is to drain at least a third of the water out, and we'll just cautiously check how hot it is. So it's stone cold, and that's presumably because all the hot water's been used up. I said what I might also do is just crack the nut at the top to let air in there. This little thing I've got here is you can get these from Amazon or eBay. It's just a little thermometer with a probe, and I kind of dot these around the heating system at various places so you can see what the temperature of various things is. So we've got one on that cylinder. We've got flow and return temperatures. So they're really cool little temperature sensors. Good to just keep an eye on how temperatures are doing. So I'm going to stop the video and possibly crack the nut at the top. So using this adjustable spanner, which just about goes far enough to take off this 22mm or 3/4 inch nut, whichever one it is. I've just undone that. It came out quite nicely, and I just lifted the compression fitting out a little bit to let some air in, and it is running out. It is allowed to drain a bit faster. What I'll do before I put it together is clean that up with some bit of wire wool, maybe a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, and then probably just put a little bit of some sort of sealant, like a bit of silicone that's suitable for drinking water, just around the seal, just to make sure it all beds in nicely and doesn't leak. But we'll cover that when we put it back together again. The most important thing now is to drain enough of the water out to make sure that the water's dropped down to 2/3 of that, and it's most importantly beneath the level of that. So as you can see, water's flowing out quite nicely. I did actually just loosen the kind of outer part of the drain valve so I could open this even more, which is giving a really good flow of water. Just want to be a bit careful you don't undo the threads too much, in which case this will pop out, so just being a bit cautious of that. And when this bucket is nearly full, then I'll turn it off and put this bucket underneath and keep swapping them over. So we're just turning that off now, stop the flow. It's all nice and no panic, no issue. So hopefully this will just turn off. So I just need to get the little spanner on there. So that's just stopping, no problems, and we'll just swap the buckets over and then we're good. So I've drained down about half the tank. I don't know if there's an exact way of knowing how much water's in it, but when you tap it, it sounds hollow. As long as it's beneath that pipe where you can get the water out. So I'm going to very gently undo that nut, and hopefully no water will come out of that. So it's tricky holding the spanner at the same time as the camera, and you just swap hands with that. So that again just about fits on the nut. This will be the moment of truth where we figure out whether the well, first of all, whether it's empty or not, but also the other point is so I did slightly crack it earlier, but it wasn't tight. It wasn't too tight. It's a bit furry, a bit gritty, but not too bad. So I'm undoing that a bit carefully. Just have the bucket ready underneath. Just to get some water, and if we just let that. So I think there's no water in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, undo these screws and take the expansion tank off. There might be some gungy water inside because of course the bladder's failed, so I don't want too much of that to end up back in the system. So we'll just take that off, okay? So possibly the hardest part of the job so far was getting the old cylinder off, which is there. Reason being that it's actually completely full of water, so basically it's clearly water that's gone to the wrong side of the bladder, which is why it's failed. So that's good. Also, so it's very heavy, so it's pulling down on the screws that hold it to the wall, and also my screwdriver wasn't long enough, so I got a whole set of extension bits, which also gave a little bit of flexibility, so I could just about squeeze around the side of the cylinder. I'll probably just have a look at those fixings to see if they're still good, but make sure they are, because it obviously wants to be a solid connection or solid fitting. You don't want to have the weight pushing down on the pipe. So we'll just have a look at that, see what's in the wall. I think there's probably a bit of studding in there, but this one clearly they've used some sort of screw and fixing, but we'll see. The top of the pipe looks great, so we'll just clean that up with a bit of wire wool, and then we can start the reverse procedure. The other thing was that, of course, when I took the nut off, so water isn't coming out of here, which means I have drained enough out of the tank, out of the cylinder. But of course there was water that was running out of the bottom of the expansion vessel, which was very hard to capture because it was essentially running down the pipe and pouring all over this electrical junction box, which is what the thermostat's connected into. So actually it was very good to turn the heating system off, isolate it, so we will just make sure that that's all dry and clean before we put it back together again. I'm also going to clean up the top of that pipe, put a little tiny bit of silicone seal, not silicone sealant, but silicone grease suitable for water around that to make sure it all beds in beautifully. So just whilst we're getting ready to fit the new one, this is still the old one, but I've got the nut that came with the new one, so we'll just make sure that fits, which will verify we've got the right thread. So yeah, that screws on there perfectly well. So I've ordered the right one, basically. So I think that's the 22mm version. If you did need to swap over if you bought the wrong version and it was just the bladder that was knackered, then you can actually unbolt this plate, and this plate's probably still okay, clean up a bit, and that's then you can use your old connection on that. So if you do accidentally, it's obviously better to use the new one, but this is, I think, all stainless steel. So it's when you undo those 6 bolts, there's obviously pressurized gas in there, so you want to let that out first on one side of the balloon, but then you can change the whole plate over, and the plate bolts up against the bladder, which makes the seal. So that's something you can do if you need to. I'm also going to change, I don't know if I put those washers on or whatever, it was always that way, but the problem with these washers is you have to take the screw out all the way to lift it off its sort of keyholes. So I'm going to actually put smaller washers on, so it's not so hard to install, tighten up. I'm also going to change these for new screws because the heads are a bit knackered. So I've got some new screws and suitable washers so that we can hang it on the wall and then tighten up, as opposed to having to take the screw out to get it on and off the wall. So also the other important thing to remember about a job like this is, because we've done our prep work, we've drained it down, we've turned the water off, we're not panicking, so I can leave things for a bit, and it's a really good opportunity at this point in the job to stop for a glass of wine, because obviously, it's a job that requires mental dexterity, but you need to be relaxed as well. So my lovely wife's poured me a very nice glass of white wine. It's a Baccalo Bianco Puglia, so Italian, of course, very delicious. So I'm going to enjoy a glass of that whilst I just sit back and think about the next step. The next step I think will be clean up all the joints and basically make sure that we've put a little bit of silicone on them, wire wool the bits we need to wire wool, and then put the screws in to mount the hot water expansion tank back onto. So as with many jobs, the fixings are often the harder part than the plumbing. So this fixing, which the expansion tank is going to fit on nicely into a joist, no problem, very strong. This one was screwed into plasterboard with one of those awful plasterboard fixings, which of course is not good and it's just disappeared into the wall there. So I think I need to figure out what to do about that. Now, when I put my finger in the wall, it feels like there's a joist beneath it. So I think what I'm going to do is put a piece of wood in the wall there and then screw it downwards. So put a bit of wood through there, screw it downwards through here, through the bit of wood onto the joist. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a bit of that plasterboard out and do it properly so I can actually see what I'm doing, and then screw a bit of wood on the top, and then that'll give me a better fitting. So more wine needed. Okay, so what I've decided to do is I've cut a slot in the wall so I can see what's going on. There is indeed a horizontal joist or beam, whatever, going across. So I've got this piece of wood which is much longer than the hole. So I'm going to basically glue that in place, and then when I tighten up the expansion cylinder, it will basically pull this against the plasterboard, which is no worse than the other plasterboard fitting, which just screws into the plasterboard. In fact, it's got more surface area to grip onto, and then also the glue will harden. So I've cut that hole out. It's a bit of a mess. We can plaster up afterwards, but then I'm going to hoover up, get some glue, and then yeah, and also not forgetting to check the junction box that if it's just got inside. I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to do it now. Right, so I've put a goodly amount of, I put the piece of wood in there with a goodly amount of glue. I've drilled a hole in the wood to stop it splitting when I put the screw in. I've put the screw in. That'll pull tight when I put the expansion cylinder on. I've put that one in, that's a good fixing. I've cleaned up the end of that. I've dried off the electrical connections. So we're just ready to fit the expansion cylinder, which is here, which no doubt will be more tricky. All these things are tricky, aren't they? So I'm just going to put the camera so you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. I don't know if you can see the right bit, and you'll get the first glimpse of the back of my head. But the idea is that this is going to put some washers in here. Hopefully you can see that. I might just loosen those off a little bit so I can pull the washers further away from the wall, so they end up on the right side of the cylinder fixings. So this one. The nice thing about this piece of wood is that it can slide around a bit from side to side, so what's good about that is if we can make sure the alignment's spot on. So that's going to get hooked onto that one. Okay, I need to let it out a bit more. Need some surprisingly long screws actually. The plates on the expansion cylinder do lift it quite a way away from the wall. There, so just in case you didn't see what I was doing, we've got that is now hung on that. We'll tighten that up in a minute. That is hung on there, hopefully, and that's sat on there. So I think I'll just tighten these up. So I've cleaned all this up. The threads are good, so I'm just going to gently. It's always good to do these sort of things finger tight, because you absolutely do not want to cross the threads on it. So just tighten that on up there. We've already tightened that up. That was the drain. I may as well just get this one tightened finger tight as well, and then we can tighten that up properly with a spanner in a minute. With spanners and compression fittings, you don't want to go crazy. I mean, you want to tighten it up so it feels snug, but you're not trying to, you don't want hundreds of kilograms of newtons there. and then that's that. So we're going to tighten these up with a screwdriver. I always think with these sorts of things it's best doing it by hand as opposed to electric, because in case something starts to split, you can control it better. So just tighten that up. I'll do the same on the other side. I will stop the video because it's super hard to tighten these up one-handed, but and then I'll tighten that up with the adjustable spanner that's just down there, and then we can check that it's all snug. So it's near impossible to get a screwdriver around the side of that. So if only these mounting plates have been a little bit wider. So you just can't get the screwdriver in properly. So I've ended up resorting to putting the screwdriver in a ratchet, which with an adapter, which seems to work quite well. Again, it's hard to do with one hand, but you can see that it is actually tightening up quite well. So that seemed to be, I was struggling for a good 15 minutes trying to get it tight with the screwdriver. It's here, it's on this side that's the problem. You just can't get anything in there, it's not enough space. So I think a tip to Zilmet would have been to try and make the bracket a little bit wider. I guess they're trying to make it no wider than the cylinder, but I think it's very rare that you'd get the cylinder, that this access, you know, you wouldn't have a bit of space either side of the cylinder. If you had a cupboard that is exactly the width of the cylinder, yes, I understand that you wouldn't want the bracket to protrude, but I think that that's not a realistic use case. So I would have tended to make the brackets a little bit wider, then you can get a screwdriver. So if you put a screwdriver on the side, you miss it. So you need some sort of flexi drive or something. I don't have that. So anyway, the ratchet seems to do the trick. So I've had to loosen it all off, and I'll just tighten those up in a minute. Right, that's all good and solid and on the wall. Very nice indeed, so no problems. Hand tighten first, then tighten properly. It's amazing how many tools you end up sort of needing for things. Screwdrivers, ratchets, glue, drills, electric drill bits, vacuum cleaner. Nothing's ever quite as simple as you think. Anyway, it's all tight, I've checked everything, and now we're going to repressurize the system. Now the other thing is, this is supposedly pre-charged to 3 bars. It was, I checked it, and I just checked it with a bicycle pump. So I don't want to let much gas out because it's nitrogen apparently. So, but I checked it and it was at 3 bar. So as you can hear, it's all nice and empty. And by the time that thing gets up to 3 bars, it should still be empty, unlike the other one. I weighed the other one, it was like about, I don't know, 15 kilograms in the end, so it had at least, I don't know, whatever the weight of the thing is. 3 kilograms for the cylinder, 12 litres of water stuck in it, so definitely need changing. Anyway, so we'll gently turn the water on and check for leaks and do a bit of a tidy up. The tempting glass of wine, but I'm not gonna have any more until I've checked that it's all working. So we're all tight, done a double check. We're going to gently turn the water on a bit and check for leaks. So I think these taps were turned off, so that's where I was draining it through, but we'll just check those. So we're going to turn it on a bit, not full blast, just in case something goes catastrophically wrong. So just turn it on a bit. You can hear water rushing in. Those taps are clearly not off. Just turn those off for a minute. And then we want to make sure that this comes up to pressure and water isn't pouring all over the floor. So of course this cylinder will be filling up with water, so there'll be tons of air that wants to come out, but we should see the pressure start to come up here. So I think what I'll do is I'll start to let some water out of the tap, the hot tap particularly. So still hollow, so let's just open the hot tap, and that will let some of the air out of the system. So the hot one is that. So I think the issue is that this tap is one of the ones I isolated from here. So I just want to open up this valve, which will let water out of that circuit. So that now should let water out, air out of this tap. So we'll just open this up. Yes, should get lots of air out of there in it. I'm also going to, well, perhaps I won't turn anything on quite yet, but that should be now filling with water. Now, because we sort of played with, obviously, that joint that joint, this joint, and also the pressure release valve. Just want to make sure nothing's dripping, so we're looking okay so far. You can probably hear the, so the system's still all powered down. So you can hear air coming out. So I might just increase the flow a little bit. Right, now we've got water coming out, which is good. So I'm just going to turn that off. Let some of the, we'll probably have a bunch of air in the cold water side as well. I think I'll turn them both on for a while. But most importantly, what we want to do is make sure there's no leakage in this part of the building. So the pressure's coming up. There's not water on the floor, which is good. Now that is dripping a little bit, so is that simply because it's not tight enough? I'll just tighten it and see what's going on. So the issue is, well, we're up to pressure, which is good, so we're not leaking out of these joints here, but we are dripping out of the overflow, so probably the washer on the end of the overflow has come adrift. So what we need to do is take it off and probably see if we've got a spare washer to go on there. Maybe it's just needs turning around, we'll see. So I'm just going to stop the video and then I'll report back on what's happened. Right, so the reason it was dripping was because basically the seal that's supposed to be in there had totally disintegrated and is now in this bucket of water at the bottom. So the good thing about these videos with this YouTube channel is you get to see all the things that don't go quite as expected. So basically there's supposed to be a seal on the end of that, but after 10 or 15 years of getting hot and cold, it's totally disintegrated. Luckily, I have a set of rubber washers, Rolson, I'm not quite sure where I bought it from, but I thought it would be useful one day. And in that set, there's a set of rubber washers 4x16x4 mil, which is exactly the right size. That's what the washer looks like there. So that pops on the end. You can then tighten it up and see what happens. Now there is another O-ring on there, but that only really comes into its own when you are when you're draining the water out, because normally this is making the seal. So I'm not going to change that because I don't want to mess around with it, but I'm going to put the seal on, put a little bit of silicone lubricant and then tighten it up. Now you might say, why is water not pouring out of that pipe and did you not have to drain the whole system down again? Luckily not. There's enough of a vacuum to stop water pouring out of the tank. So although that's open, water's not coming out. It would do if I opened up any of those things. This is a really good reason why it's good to have plenty of isolation valves all over the place. So I've isolated part of the house there and there. So yeah, so I just put the washer on and we should be good. Right, so it's job's a good one. So this is all tight. First of all we're up to pressure and the water's on, right? There's no water leaking out of that connection, nor this one. We'll check it again in about an hour. It's always good to just dry everything off, make sure. But nice and empty, fantastic. The overflow, the drain pipe is not leaking, which means that seal had gone and we've changed it, which is good. And I've just checked the ton dish and the pressure release valve, that's all looking good as well. The boiler is running, so you can see that we are generating hot water. Actually there's a couple of zones on at the moment. We've got the bedroom zone on, but also both hot water cylinders are heating up. Obviously the one on the right has got hot water in it still from before. The one on the left is full of cold water, so you can see that the one on the right, the temperature at the top of it is 53 degrees and this one is 20.6, but it should be rising because we are passing water through the valves. So this is one of the motorized valves for the left hand one. You can see there's a lever here at the side. You can check that it's open, and if I feel that, I'm getting hot water through here. So that's going to be heating up the primary circuit, which will then get up to a certain temperature, and then this thermostat will shut off. thermostats at the bottom, so that the whole cylinder has to be up to temperature. If you put the thermostat at the top, I mean, it's not that I put it anywhere, it came as it is, but if it was at the top, then obviously the hot water rises and it will switch off before it's full. So they put the hot water, the thermostat, not quite at the bottom, but fairly close to the bottom. This one's also, of course, the same sort of deal. At the moment, you know, both are heating up, so I suspect this one will turn off first. Just have a look at the boiler and stuff. So I've got various thermometers on various pipes. So the output of the boiler is pumping out water at 52 degrees, come back at 35. So that's of course correct, because of course we're putting heat into the house and also into the cylinders. I might just turn off the. Well, actually, I'll leave it running. It's fine. It'll get there eventually. And then the boiler, which is very nice, Valent, is. Everything's looking great. We're up to pressure. Well, pressure's good, and jobs are good. So I'll come back in about an hour. Hopefully no leaks. I think I started at about 5:30, and the time now, I'm not sure if the clock is 7:30. So it took about 2 hours all in all. So obviously the video is a bit shorter because I paused to get tools and things. So the only thing I need to do to really finish the job off beautifully is to fill that hole with some filler or something, and I will have a look at that a bit later. So that's fine. It's a good solid fitting, much better than it was before, and yeah, just need to fill that hole and check for leaks. So job's a good one, nice job, and hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope it was useful. Now it's of course wine time, so looking forward to that as well. Next job I want to show you some time is fitting a sliding door on this boiler room. The reason being that my wife makes the most delicious bread, and it needs to be sort of, when the dough rises, it's sourdough bread, and when she puts it on these shelves to rise. And the problem with the boiler room is it was a bit sort of variable, the temperature, because of course when the heating's off from the cellar it's cold and that sort of thing. When the boiler comes on it's nice and warm. So what I'm going to do is fit a sliding door here, so that you can keep all the heat in the boiler room. So this is the boiler room. So I've put in already this piece of wood to give me something to hang the sliding mechanism off. And then the sliding mechanism, which came from Tool Station, about 36 quid, is this thing here. So I need to hang a door off of that. I'll probably make it out of plywood or something, so it'll slide. Basically, it'll just slide that way. But that's a video for another day. Anyway, have a great evening. Cheers. Bye then.